I gavel this meeting to order. Will the clerk open the roll so members can take their attendance on the electronic voting board? All right, quorum is present. Looks like a quorum is present. I want to welcome everybody to the Subcommittee on Elections Administration. I will say this for patience, we have a lot of people online that want to speak. So we're going to hold that in our hands as we go forth. And looks like we have some members as well that have some other subcommittees meetings to get to. So we're going to take them up first. So Delegate Wilt, are you up for the challenge?
Certainly hope so, Madam Chair.
You have the floor.
So, Madam Chair, committee members, before you is House Bill 2357, and it requires when someone responds to a jury questionnaire with a response that would otherwise disqualify them to vote, or they've moved, the individual is responsible for maintaining that information, that the clerk would pass that information on to the registrar. So that's the bill. It's pretty simple. And
is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor? Microphone. Questions from the committee?
Yes, Madam Chair, I had a question for the delegate of, are there any lists that are communicated prior to where you're wanting someone to look at this list? Are there any steps previous to this that might have already included elect or any comparable measurements prior to the step that you're trying to create?
Madam Chair, I would say possibly that, yeah, there's lists, various avenues to lists being generated, but yeah, I'm looking specifically like when a clerk is trying to get folks to serve on a jury, and so they send out that questionnaire, and when individuals answer that, and there's things that disqualify them from serving on a jury, that the clerk would simply pass that on to the registrar.
Madam Chair, I think what I'm asking is, isn't that what already happens in order for them to know who they can contact to serve on a jury? So would this not be duplicative? Because I think they know who they can call to be on a jury because someone says, here's the people that can be on a jury, because we know once you've had your rights taken, you can't serve, you can't be a notary, you can't vote, those sorts of things. So if there was previous communication between elect in order to even get the list of who can serve on a jury, I wasn't sure if that was something that happened earlier in the process.
Madam Chair, I don't believe that's the case. I mean, our clerks send out that questionnaire asking when someone gets drawn from the pool. Now, granted, they would be in that pool from some form or fashion, but they still send out the questionnaire saying, hey, can you, here are these qualifiers to serve on a jury, and do you meet those? And sometimes, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Some data that my local clerk gave me that it's a pretty large number. When we just in our area, how many questionnaires? He sent out 5,000 jury questionnaires in our community, and there were several hundred that came back that the individuals weren't qualified. That's just in my community. So I would think that over the whole state, that could be a pretty significant number.
Go ahead, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And just a follow-up, I believe in some of the situations that we were seeing when my language, not yours, when the voters were purged based off information that was coming from DMV, one of the things that was listed was that sometimes people will say, I'm not a citizen, in order to try to get out of jury duty. But it didn't mean that they were actually not a citizen. So in that instance, if your bill was law and someone was using that to try to get out of jury duty, how would we what would be the backstop should they would just lose their right to vote because they checked that in order to not serve on a jury? And I am not saying that this is what some people should be doing, but just, we heard information that that is what some people were doing because they needed to feed their family, they needed to keep their jobs, and so they were trying to get out of jury duty by marking that, but they actually were in fact citizens.
Correct. Yeah, Madam Chair, I would say that, that can happen. That can have someone, for whatever reason, can accidentally mark the questionnaire wrong, and they truly are a citizen. But what happens next when that questionnaire goes back to the clerk? Then the clerk would send them a notice saying, okay, you can't, you're not qualified, and but then once and they would send it to the address that they have, or however they can, the known address. The clerk had to send it somewhere, and so they would respond back to that and say, here's based on your information, you're not qualified. The person, if they made a mistake, they can appeal, say, no, wait a minute, and so there's opportunity to correct that.
Any other questions from the subcommittee? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? Come right up to the podium.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Committee, League of Women Voters of Virginia, we oppose this bill. It creates unnecessary administrative burdens and can place legitimate voters in legal jeopardy. Thank you.
Okay, moving to, moving to online, we have Ms. Clarabelle Wheeler speaking in favor of the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. I speak in favor of this bill because it's an extra additional safeguard, which is sometimes already in answer to Delegate Price's question. Some registrars and some clerks already communicate this information with each other. But this would put into the law a requirement that the clerks would transmit their jury questionnaire information. As you know, there are 5 questions on the jury questionnaire that automatically eliminate people from serving on a jury. Those same 5 questions also automatically eliminate someone from voting. They're not a citizen, they're dead, they no longer live in the community, they're a felon whose rights have not been restored. This would allow the clerks to communicate, and it can be done electronically, so it's not a burden on the clerks. I've spoken with many clerks, and they have no problem doing this. The registrars would appreciate the additional support. There would be a check and balance before someone's name is removed from the registered voters list. Based on this information, they would get a letter from the registrar explaining why their name is in consideration to be removed, and the voter could then communicate with the registrar, oh, I made a mistake when I was marking my jury questionnaire. Both the jury questionnaire survey and the registered voter forms are sworn to be factual. So when you sign those applications, you are swearing that you've committed no felony by not giving accurate information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. And we have Martha Cohen speaking in favor of the bill.
Yes, I want to echo those comments, and also I also have spoken to clerks, and many of them have closets with envelopes that they don't know what to do with.
Martha, excuse me, Ms. Cohen.
Yes.
I apologize. Can
Yes.
we see your face? It's a kind of a policy. We just got, there you go. We're just getting your forehead in. Okay. Gratitude. Thank you.
Sorry. Who don't know what to do with a lot of these returns because there's no actual guidance about this. So while some clerks do share it, other clerks aren't sure what to do. And since there is that ability to make sure that no one's taken off just from that letter, we should want to have the most accurate records possible. And also, no one should lie to get out of jury duty, because we want people to, if that's happening, because we want people to be able to be judged by their peers.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. And last, Ms. Nancy Smith.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. Nancy Smith with Middle Resolution PAC. We're in support of this bill of being patroned by Delegate Wilt, using information that's gleaned from the jury questionnaires, as Dr. Wheeler has mentioned, basically allows the registrar's office to do work that they are already doing, which is largely, and a good portion of the work they do is list maintenance, which is required by elect and by the local registrars to maintain an accurate voter file. Only those potential jurors who provide information that disqualifies them would be submitted to the registrar. That would not be the whole of the list. In my locality, the clerk of court indicated that there were over 16,000 questionnaires sent out in anticipation of securing jurors. So it is a large number that potentially provides a lot of information to be able to go back to the registrar and continue to do the work of list maintenance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And so I have, just to call to make sure they're not, there we go. Okay. We have Ms. Shelley Oberlander.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Glass and members of the P&E Committee. I'm Shelley Oberlander.
Ms. Oberlander,
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very clearly, but policy, we have to be able to see your face. So may you turn on your camera for your testimony?
You see me? Oh, here, got it.
There you are. There you go. I believe you muted yourself, Miss. There you go. You just muted yourself. So I'm going to give you a chance to go ahead and start, Ms. Oberlander. You have the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Glass. My name is Shelley Oberlander. I'm an electoral member in Loudoun County, speaking on behalf of myself, but on my experience with working in elections. I support this bill. I think all the government agencies should work together to uphold the law and the Constitution and to help the registrars to maintain accurate voter rolls with eligible voters. And so we have experienced the process, just to be clear, the process the general registrars use is, in the case if it happens to be a non-citizen that they're removing, they send a letter to that individual, and they have 14 days. The individual has 14 days to respond if there's an error made, and then they are put into the removal process. But then they're sent a second letter from the general registrar telling them that they're being removed or canceled, and they can respond again. So the person, if there happens to be an error, has two opportunities from the general registrar to clear up any errors. And I think we've seen very few when they have been removed from the voter registration role, and they can also be re-enlisted without any problem if they're truly eligible. But I think that the government agencies should work together, and I think the general registrars, we should give them all the tools that they're able to have to maintain accurate voter rolls of eligible voters, and that is their job. So I support this bill and ask the members to join in supporting this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oberlander. Are there any further questions from the subcommittee? I must acknowledge that if this bill does report, we have a letter from the Speaker's office saying that the bill needs to go to appropriations for consideration. Hearing no further comments, the committee operates by motion. Or would you like to have the last word, Delegate Wilt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would say, and I appreciate the testimony that was pointed out. I think I misspoke. I think it said that the clerk sent out the letter. It's the registrar that sends the letter to them.
Gratitude. Committee operates by motion.
I move to adopt.
You move to report with.
Move to report, yes.
With the recommendation to.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, substitute motion.
It has been.
Oh.
It was seconded, so it has been. Do you have a substitute motion?
Yes, motion to table.
Okay. It has been moved to table. I need a second. Second. It has been moved and properly second to table House Bill 2357. Will the clerk open the roll so members can enter their votes on electronic voting board? All right, and House Bill 2357 has been tabled on a vote of 5-2. Thank you, Delegate Wilt.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, for your consideration.
Okay. Next, we have House Bill 1751. Delegate Ennis.
You know, I don't.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee. Chairman Glass and members of the committee, good afternoon. House Bill 1751 would clarify a portion of the code that prohibits the use of loudspeakers within 300 feet of a polling location on Election Day. Current code prohibits the use of loudspeakers only on Election Day, but it's unclear about early voting, the early voting period. This issue was brought to me by a voter registrar who felt uncomfortable with the use of a loudspeaker at a polling location during early voting, but local police were unsure of how to interpret the code and as a result did nothing. This bill makes it clear that Election Day means any day in which voting is taking place, be it primaries, early voting, or on General Election Day. Our constituents deserve to cast their votes in peace, and this bill would simply allow that to happen. I hope it is the will of the committee to report this bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Ennis. Is there any questions or comments from the subcommittee? Don't go too far. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Come right to the podium.
Thank you, Madam Chair. League of Women Voters of Virginia, we strongly support this bill. We should not have loudspeakers anywhere near any location where ballots are being cast. Thank you.
Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? All right, we will turn online, and we have Ms. Clarabelle Wheeler speaking in favor of the bill.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. This is an extremely important bill because it clarifies, as the delegate has explained, the in-person absentee voting and formal election day. The Code of Virginia, section 24.2-605, already prohibits loudspeakers anywhere within a 300-foot perimeter of the voting place. Therefore, this bill simply includes in-person absentee voting, which would be in the registrar's office or any satellite office of the registrar, from having loudspeakers interfering with the voters' free enjoyment of entering and leaving the polling place. I hope you will see that this is a good bill and will foster a safe environment for voters. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Wheeler, again. Would you like to have any other questions from the subcommittee? Delegate Ennis, would you like the last word?
No, I just ask everyone for their support. I think this is a good bill. It makes good common sense. Thank you for your support.
All right. And with that, the committee operates by motion.
Move to report.
Oh, is that your last question? All right. Move to report.
Second.
Okay. It has been moved and properly second to report House Bill 1751. The clerk will open the roll so that the members can state their vote on the electronic voting system. All right. The committee will go at ease. We can go ahead and vote. Okay, all right, yep. The clerk will destroy the rolls. Okay.
Did you have to close it? And so we're destroying this one, right?
So for the benefit of the folks in the room, what we're going to do is we're going to destroy that vote and we're going to bring it back up so that we can vote on it again. And thank you for your patience. It was to report.
Let's try it again.
Okay. All right. The clerk will open the rolls and members can indicate their vote on the electronic voting board. All right, the clerk will close the rolls, and it looks like House Bill 1751 does not report on a vote of 2 to 5. All right, next up we have House Bill 1952. Oh, actually, do you mind if? Yep, we'll go ahead and switch over. Okay, Delegate Walker, you have 2 bills up for us.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
So if you could go ahead and take up House Bill 2011.
2011.
We'll do House Bill 21.
Comes. Ready?
You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 211 makes it easier for voters to cancel their voter registration before an election. Currently, if a voter wants to cancel their registration by mail or other means, not in person, they must do so at least 22 days before the election. The bill would change the requirements so that if a cancellation request is submitted before Election Day, it would be valid to the election. It will help make sure that voters aren't registered in 2 localities and can cancel their registration if needed. These changes would assure voters that the registration records are accurate and up to date, reducing potential concerns about errors or outdated information. Part of the reason for this is in the city of Lynchburg, we have 3 colleges or universities, and sometimes the individual may live in another part of the Commonwealth, and instead of going back home and doing it by mail at the last minute because of the 22-day requirement, then if they could cancel the registration and vote at the place where the college or university is, then they'll still be eligible to vote. But because of the 22 days right now, it's hard to do it by mail because we all know how the U.S. mail service is. And so this just makes it easier for somebody that changes their previous registration in another part of the Commonwealth and allows them at the last minute, or if they decide to vote in the locality in which they are residing. So that's the whole purpose of this right here. It still allows them to vote, but making sure they're properly counseled without trying to vote twice.
Gratitude. Thank you, Delegate Walker. Are there any questions from the subcommittee? I see Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question for the patron. All right. Just to confirm, Delegate, isn't that the reason why we have provisional ballots? So on the event, let's say I live in Woodbridge, I went to Virginia State, I wanted to change my voter registration. I think at that time they will tell me to vote provisionally until they can figure out the logistics of where I'm voting and changing votes. Isn't that the reason why we have that in place now, to address some of those concerns?
Madam Chair, if I may address the delegate.
Delegate.
Yes, sir, you are correct, Delegate. But let me just share with you an incident in this past election here, the 2024 election. We have one college in particular that they had over 400 provisional ballots at one precinct. Sir, it takes a long time to count those provisional ballots by a given time, which is what the code requires at this point. So what the registrar is asking is, can you help me out a little bit here, or help them out a little bit here? So that's kind of the purpose behind this right here, is to eliminate so much of the provisional ballot process. You're right, it is law and you can do that. And so this is just basically trying to help the registrars there. Now sometimes, if I may continue, sometimes individuals may not choose to vote until the last minute. And with this last national election, there was a lot of college students all over the Commonwealth that were trying to vote. And this was something that the Electoral Board and the registrar came back and said, can you help us out? Because sometimes students just wait till the last minute, and it takes forever. Actually, it took several extra days past the provisional time in which our locality was able to get all of the ballots counted. So this is just kind of a helpmate for them. Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Delegate Sickles.
I'd just like to ask counsel, if I understand this right, if you tell the registrar or submit what are we going to call it, a cancellation of your registration, if you do it the day ahead of the election, it's valid. Is that what this does? Right now, they have to do it before right now we have a 21-day limit to register to vote. And so I see in the code it says 22. That means that you can cancel your vote up to 22 days. But after it hits 21, and we're about to change that, of course, but after it's 21, you can't cancel your registration under current law. Is that right, Council?
Madam Chair, Delegate Sickles, yeah, that's correct. Currently, you'd have to cancel before the close of books in order to guarantee that your registration was canceled prior to the election. And under this, you would be able to cancel up until the day before the election and guarantee that your voter registration is canceled. Okay, and if I can follow up. So I'm slow. I got that now. So how does that help on the same-day registration issue? Because if you go in to vote same-day register and you're registered in another jurisdiction, but you want to register in a jurisdiction that you're presently located in, you're not able to do that, or just explain to me why this is going to help that same-day registration onslaught. Madam Chair, Delegate Sickles, you would still be able to vote same-day registration whether or not you canceled. It's just a matter of whether, if you did same-day registration on Election Day and you didn't cancel, then later when they went to look to validate your ballot and your registration, they would see that you were registered elsewhere. They would cancel that other registration, transfer you. If you canceled before, then they would see you weren't registered, and they just insert you back into the system.
So it would be, Madam Chair. So this will make the process easier for the registrars to validate the provisional ballot. The SDR is a provisional ballot.
Nah, he's like, I cannot answer
Got
that.
your moment.
I should not answer that.
That's what this, but okay, sorry. But that's what, I'll ask the patron, that's what you're intending to do, though. You're trying to help the registrars here validate the same-day registration voters because they're provisional ballots.
Madam Chair, if I may.
You're welcome.
Yes, yes, Delegate Sickles, that's correct. Because of such a large provisional ballots, they were kind of screaming help. And this is a way that we could do that, by canceling the registration prior to, then that only show up on the local ballot, show up in the locality in which they're voting here. So that way their vote does count. And instead of, going through this process, well, you didn't do it in time, and so we're going to cancel your vote altogether. So, for people voting and sometimes first-time voters, this is really important, and the registrar said, we just want everybody to be able to vote. This helps us. So that's where this is coming from, Delegate Sickles.
Delegate Price.
Yes, so I just wanted to remind the members today and apologize to the patrons. Sometimes when bills come in higher numbers. They aren't quite docketed quick enough. We actually voted on the floor today to move the number to 10. And so technically this, I believe, would be in conflict to a bill that we already passed out of the House today. So I will, while apologizing to you about not having all of the bills in front of us as we were doing our work, let you know that we also heard, from the registrars and Delegate Cole, Delegate Lawfer, and a lot of the delegates had the Registrars Association support with that bill. And so I think we were more comfortable moving to the 10 versus the 1, but for voters to rest assured that process is still there for the same day voter registrations where, as was said, you wouldn't have to cancel your registration in order to utilize that. The entire point of that is for you to use that provisional ballot in order for that to be a seamless process.
Thank you very much for that information.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone in opposition?
Leader of Women Voters of Virginia, again, we are opposed to this bill. It could lead to inadvertent or improper cancellations of valid voter registrations and remove safeguards against errors. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And we have no one signed up to speak online. Are there any other questions from the subcommittee? Hearing none, would you like to have the last word?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
With that, the committee operates by motion.
Move to report.
Delegate Green?
Move to report. Move to report.
One of y'all got a second it.
Need a second.
I'll second.
It has been moved and properly second to report House Bill 2011. The clerk will open the rolls and members can put their vote in electronic voting board. Clerk will close the rolls, and it looks like House Bill 2011 fails to report on a vote of 2 to 5. Thank you so much, Delegate. On to the next bill.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Which is going to be House Bill 2139.
That's correct, yes.
You have the
Okay, proceed. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. HB 2139 comes at the request of the City of Lynchburg. This bill allows candidates running for a local office to choose whether their political party affiliation appears next to their name on the election ballot. This would only apply if candidates has officially nominated by a political party or through a primary process, and the decision to use this label is up to the candidate. It would be entirely optional to use this party label. It would not be required by the candidate there. So basically what the locality is saying, that if a candidate for city council, a board of supervisors, which right now there's no label, if they chose to run with an R or a D by their name, then that option would be applicable under this bill right here. It's optional, it is not required, but some localities like to do that.
Thank you, Delegate Walker. Are there any questions from the subcommittee?
Yes, ma'am.
Delegate Sickles.
So if a candidate, Madam Chair, seeks the party endorsement of one of the two parties, or is nominated, either one, and they receive it, they have the option then not to use it on the election, at the election. Even after they've sought it and received the nomination, they can decide to not have a party label. Is that right?
Madam Chair, respond is yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Delegate
Well,
Sickles.
we just changed this law. We just did this, didn't we? Or maybe it was vetoed. But the council says, okay, we made, at least the General Assembly sent the governor a bill that said that if you receive the nomination of a party, you can't then just say, I'm not that party. I mean, but apparently that didn't make it into law. Is that right, Madam Chair? I think I see council shaking. So that's all I need to know. Thank you.
All right, Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think my question goes towards, for those who may not seek the endorsement, but someone is running, maybe they're under the Hatch Act and they just want to stay neutral. They did not ask the party, but the party still wants to endorse them. How does this work with that?
So, Madam Chair, Delegate, I think in that case, there again, it would be up to the individual. As I said earlier, this is an optional event here. And in that case, is right up, it's up to the candidate, what they want to choose there. They may not run with a R or D by their name, but they may seek the endorsement. So you have that option as well if that candidate so choose there. So you have a party label, or you could seek the endorsement, or run as an independent.
Delegate Singh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an interesting bill that I think has a lot of different consequences and externalities to it. I'd like to ask Council a question about the Hatch Act, going off of Delegate Henson's comment. If I run as an independent and I'm a federal government employee, but my opponent declares for a particular party, does that make the race a partisan race by dint of my opponent declaring for a political party, and therefore I'm running in a partisan race, and therefore I can't run in that election because it's there's a Hatch Act violation?
Madam Chair, Delegate Singh, that's an interesting question. I'm not prepared to answer that at this point, but I could get back to you on that if you don't mind.
Thank you. I'm concerned about somebody who's playing by the rules.
Delegate Singh.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. I'm concerned about somebody who's playing by the rules, works for the federal government, runs in a nonpartisan race, and through no act of their own, it has become a partisan race, and that they either have to quit the race or quit their job. I like the optionality that you're presenting in this bill, but I'm concerned about unintended consequences.
Thank you. Delegate Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question I'd like to ask the patron is, the way the bill is worded, if they choose not to do the D or the R, by default, does independent show up in the ballot, or is it blank? Looking at the language, it looks like the word independent would show up, whether they were independent or not.
Madam Chair, so yes, it will still be up to the candidate's choice to run as an independent. In some localities, that's what they choose to do here. Going back to the Hatch Act, I really don't know if that would impact, because you're going to have opposition. So you can still run as an independent if you were a federal employee or whatever. And if your opponent was a party label, then it's still an election. But, you posed a very interesting question there. I'm sorry I don't have that answer there. But it would be an independent delegate.
Madam Chair, for clarification, would it always be a D, an R, or independent on the ballot, or would there be no indication at all if the person chose not to?
Madam Chair, if I may. So that's up to the locality and the individual. If they chose not to have a party label, it's just going to show up their name on election day for whatever office that they're seeking there. There would be no identification by their name, I, R, D, whatever. And that's much the way it is right now in a lot of localities. The name just appears for the office, and that's it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one more question. So for candidates to decide if they want a D or an R, is the default date whenever it's due to Department of Elections, or could they wait up to the last hour to say, nope, I don't want to have a D or R near my name?
Madam Chair, if I may respond. They'd have to follow the Board of Elections guidelines there. So there's a certain date that is a cutoff that the Board of Elections, whether it's the locality or state, has to identify that name, that individual, and whether they are a party candidate or an independent candidate. So the Board of Elections laws govern that right there. You can't choose at the last minute if I want to do that.
So, Madam Chair, follow up.
Delegate Henson.
So I could announce that I'm running December 2024, and say, I'm running as an independent, and as I inch closer to the 45-day requirement, I can now say, oh, I'm now a Democrat or a Republican. I think that would that not create some type of confusion?
I'm not sure at that point what the Board of Elections has there. There again, like I stated earlier, Delegate, is that you could seek the endorsement. There's a difference between an endorsement and then running as official party label. So I think based on that, if you chose at the last minute that I'd like to get a certain party's endorsement, then you could do that and still have that independent status on the thing. Then it'd be up to that candidate then to let people know that I'm running as, the endorsement of a Republican, independent, or a Democrat. But the Board of Elections is very clear on the time in which you have to identify what you're running as far as a political party.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone in opposition? Okay. Moving to online, we have Mr. Page Johnson speaking in opposition to the bill.
Good morning, or good afternoon, Madam Chairman. My name is Paige Johnson. I am representing the Virginia Commissioners of Revenue, and I'm one of 645 elected constitutional officers in Virginia, the majority of which do not avail themselves of the party process and are nonpartisan. In the majority of Virginia localities, the local governing bodies, school boards, and constitutional officers all are nonpartisan offices. This bill will only serve to increase partisanship in offices which should remain nonpartisan. Presently, the majority of constitutional officers in all 5 offices run nonpartisan across the Commonwealth. Partisanship among all constitutional offices is unnecessary, as we do not caucus with anyone. We come together in a nonpartisan manner when issues impact us. Adding constitutional officers to partisan politics could result in more primaries. Localities bear the full brunt and cost of primary elections. This bill, as far as I know, was not requested by any known constitutional officer or constitutional officer group. In quoting VML, local elections are best served by addressing local issues, not party issues. And our local elections, we are not party connected, we are neighbors serving neighbors. This bill is identical to several bills that you all have heard over the last several years, all of which have been rejected. Given the nature of what we do as constitutional officers, candidates for constitutional office should be elected based upon their qualifications and not on their party affiliation. The Commission Revenue Association, along with other constitutional officer colleagues, and the Virginia Association of Elected Constitutional Officers have opposed this issue each time it's come up, and I ask that you reject this measure this time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. For clarity, just so that the members are clear on the bill before us, this bill is for local offices only and not constitutional officers. But we received your testimony, Mr. Johnson. To speaking with no position, we have Alex Sprague. I hope I said that right.
Yes, yes, you pronounced it right. Not a lot of people do, so thank you. Yeah, I think this is my first time ever selecting the no position option. I like the idea of it when it comes to getting involved in local elections in swing districts, but I'm not sure if the patron's aware of this, but my city of Alexandria has their city council races set up in which the top 6 would win. And then the school board races have it in which the top 3 would win. So the only objection I have is suppose one of the candidate chooses to have their party endorse on there, and then all the others choose not to, or they have independent next to their name. Might confuse some people, thinking they would probably think, this is the only Democrat or Republican on the ballot, therefore we'll just go all towards them, and therefore it might cause the other Democrats or the other Republicans that have I next to their name to be forced onto the sidelines, in which they might feel like they won't be heard. So, but other than that, like it seems like a good idea. Like as long as like the candidate has the option. So kind of hard to, yeah. It's like as an Alexandrian, like I just don't know what to make of this. And I especially share the concerns of the Delegate Sickles and Henson. So that if that makes sense.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sprague. I appreciate you. Are there any further questions from the subcommittee? Okay. Delia Singh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Another question for council. If you look at the first part of this legislation, Part B, Bravo, says for elections for federal, statewide, or General Assembly only, each candidate shall be identified by their party. But then it says for local offices only, and this is the new language, each candidate who's been nominated has the discretion. So what does local offices only refer to? Because in the prior sentence, it talks about federal, statewide, and General Assembly.
Madam Chair, Delegate, as it's used in the code, local offices refers to those offices that are specific to the locality, exclusive of constitutional offices. So that would include boards of supervisors. That would include local sheriff, or I think sheriff's constitutional office, actually. Right, yeah, sheriff's not constitutional. So it'd mainly be board of supervisors, mayor, and any other office that, again, isn't constitutional. But
what about school board?
School board currently is required to be nonpartisan, so you can't access the ballot through partisan nomination, only through petition currently. So school boards are nonpartisan, so this would not apply to school board.
Thank you.
All right. Delegate Walker, last word.
Yeah, so thank you, Madam Chair. So some of the discussions here, as I indicated earlier, this is being requested on behalf of the city of Lynchburg. So this would apply to either the city or either the county seat or the Board of Supervisors there. No other offices, as Mr. Johnson indicated, he's concerned about the constitutional officers. In the city of Lynchburg, we appoint our school board members when a few localities do that. And all of our constitutional officers except one are Republicans and have been Republicans ever since they've been running. So that's not an issue there on the constitutional side. This is just specifically for our city council or localities that have boards of supervisors. They give them this option. There again, it's an option only. It's not a requirement, sir. Ma'am, I'm sorry, Madam Speaker.
It's no worries.
We'll get through this.
We're going to get through it because we operate off of a motion. So it is now time to get through it. The committee operates via motion. It has been moved and properly second to pass by indefinitely. Okay, the clerk will open the rows. Okay, the clerk will close the rolls, and it looks like House Bill 2139 passes by indefinitely on a vote of 6-1. Thank you so much, Delegate Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the members of the committee for your time today.
Okay. All right, next up, I believe we'll have House Bill 2395, Delegate Oates.
Thank you, Chairman Glass and committee. House Bill 2395 is pretty simple. It requires that the Department of Elections would post to its official website a list of states with which it has an agreement to exchange data for voter registration list maintenance purposes. It doesn't expand in any way existing data exchange agreements. It just lists the names of the states that we currently exchange data with. And so it's that simple.
Thank you, Delegate Oates. Are there any questions from the subcommittee? Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. Did your registrars ask of this, or was there an issue? What made you bring this bill?
So yes, my registrars, two of my registrars would like to be able to understand which states we have agreements with.
follow-up, Madam Chair.
Delegate Henson.
Could they not reach out to the Commissioner of Department of Elections to get that information?
Certainly, they can. Madam Chair, you can reach out, but having the transparency and the accessibility of it on a website is good for voters and as well as registrars.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Sickles.
I was asked the patron, have you asked the commissioner to just post it? Sometimes you don't need a law for everything.
That would be too simple. Government doesn't work like that.
Just ask them to do it. They might do it.
Right. And you may be very well right. You may have pointed out the very simplicity of this situation. But I was asked to carry this, and so I have proceeded with the General Assembly's approval for this kind of action.
Great. Thank you. And we have the commissioner in the room. I don't want to put you on the spot. So I'll go ahead to, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Yeah, the League of Women Voters of Virginia supports this bill because of the transparency and the other issues that the chair made. Thank you.
Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? Seeing none, online we have Ms. Clarabelle Willer speaking in favor of the bill.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. I do speak in favor of this bill. And the former delegate asked a great question. Why not just get the commissioner to do this? Well, the commissioners change. And what one commissioner does, the next commissioner may not do. If this is put into law, then the voters of Virginia will know the list of other states with whom Virginia shares its information. And so the commissioner's office is not going to get 500,000 calls. Where do we send our data? It'll simply be on the website and all the voters will know. This is a good bill for transparency and list maintenance. Thank you very much. I hope you will vote in favor of this bill.
All right, thank you. We have Melody Clark speaking in favor of the bill. Oh, there we go. Ms. Martha Cohen speaking in favor of the bill.
Yes, I think transparency wins the day, and no one should have to call the commissioner. We all are very busy, whether you're working in the registrar, or you're an EO, or you're a regular citizen. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know even that they call the commissioner. I agree with the prior speaker that commissioners do come and go, so it should be in the law. We should make everything as transparent as possible, and I would suggest that when it goes up, I hope you will support it, that it goes in a very clear place that's very clear for people to see, so that they understand where we're sharing and feel more and more comfortable with our process.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. And Delegate Henson, you have a question?
Just a comment. Listening to the virtual conversations, I just want to say, with this current commissioner, she's somewhat fair. Her yeses are yeses, her nos are nos. And I would just encourage people to reach out to her office and see how we can better work with her before we start going down this path. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Gratitude. Are there any further Chairwoman Price?
Yeah, I was just going to say something similar. When we asked for a public testimony, I do believe that the commissioner was readily able to tell us the states, and on a snarkier level, if we were in ERIC, it would be clear which states we were working with, because we'd be a member of ERIC. And I said that for Chairman Sickles. But did just want to mention that.
All right, gratitude. No further questions from the subcommittee. With that, the committee operates by motion.
Move to report.
Second.
All right, it has been moved and properly second to report House Bill 2395. The clerk will open the rolls. The clerk will close the rolls, and House Bill 2395 fails to report on a vote of 2 to 5.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. All right, so next up on the docket, we have House Bill 2390. Delegate Zaire.
Thank you, Chair Glass. I bring for your consideration 2390. Two components. One, it changes the early voting period from 45 days to 14 days. This is in response to our registrars. I'm sure you've heard them crying uncle. This recommendation is consistent with the many reports of officers of elections and registrars who face significant challenges staffing their early voting locations. Secondly, changing the documents required to vote allows for consistency and confidence in our voting process. Currently, a signed statement of affirmation in lieu of an acceptable form of ID is permissible. Providing the use of the affirmation of eligibility form in conjunction with allowing a provisional ballot to be cast is a reasonable accommodation and does not provide a carve-out that's inconsistent with public expectations. By casting a provisional ballot and subsequently providing proof of identification, the sanctity of the vote and the equal treatment of all voters is preserved. And so in a nutshell, this second part is trying to get rid of a double standard. Some people are required to show ID, other people are allowed to vote with just signing this paper saying I am who I say I am.
Thank you, Delegate. Questions from the subcommittee? Chairwoman Price.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering if the commissioner or someone from her staff were here. Yep. And while she's coming up, just to let the delegate know, we have had public testimony from the commissioner, and I just wanted to ask her a question because one of the things that she mentioned touched on something that you said. So, Madam Commissioner, in a previous meeting, you were talking to us about the amount of people that used provisional ballots, and I wanted to make sure if you could remind us who those people were, and if you could walk us through, I guess, the situation that the gentleman is referencing of who has to use an ID, who doesn't. Are there federal requirements? And then there's some that aren't state as to why there might be some inconsistencies. So that was, I'm sorry, that is a two-part question. And I'll go with the first. The first was just, could you tell us again, what were some of the reasons why people were using the provisional ballots on the same-day voting? I just want to remember that.
Madam Chair, Chairwoman Price, the vast majority of people who use same-day registration or use provisional ballots used it for same-day registration, meaning they were in a location where they were not registered to vote and they wanted to register and vote that day. There are other reasons to use provisional ballots, but they were very, very small in comparison to the people who were using same-day registration.
I remembered the pie chart. I just wanted to make sure that I was remembering it correctly. And then the second, I guess, for my question, Madam Chair.
Chairwoman Price.
Thank you so much. Was this idea of some people having to use ID and some not. I remember there are some federal requirements as to like the first time if you don't register in person, the first time you vote has to be in person. And is that federal statute or is that state statute as to why there might be some misunderstanding of why some people have to show ID and why some don't?
Chair Glass, Chairwoman Price, that's what we call a HAVA voter, somebody who is registering, and I can see Delegate Henson smiling since he's our resident officer of election on the committee. He's done this many times, I'm sure. It's where somebody registers to vote, and the first time they're showing up in person, they do have to show an ID, and they are flagged in the poll book as having to show an ID for that transaction.
Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the question I have is either for the patron or for council. What is the current penalty if someone self-certifies as say who I say I am, but they're lying? It's Mark Sickles filling out my absentee ballot.
Well, we hope he isn't doing anything illegal, but counsel, if you know.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Delegate, the current penalty is, it's felony voter fraud, right?
Madam Chair,
Delegate Henson.
Just commenting. So I highly doubt that people will risk a felony to incorrectly certify their absentee ballot. So I think that there's there's more room for discussion there. Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone in opposition? You have the floor.
Again, League of Women Voters of Virginia, we are opposed to this bill. We feel it would needlessly turn legitimate voters away from the ballot box, and we should not cut the time for people to vote early. Thank you.
Okay. Online, we have several testimony. First, we have up Miss Nancy Smith. And if you could keep your 30 seconds to a minute.
Yes, I will. I'm Nancy Smith. I'm with Metal Resolution PAC. This bill is crucial to ensure that there's consistency and equal standards are applied in the administration of our elections, which is of great importance to our voters. Under the current practice, an individual is permitted to cast a ballot using the affirmation of eligibility form instead of casting a provisional ballot, which then can be remedied after the election when an individual can come in and supply their ID. This practice does not treat all voters equally. I do want to add that this is not specific to federal races or, federal elections where the HAVA rule is applied. This is specific to Virginia and can be applied in any election. So just want to make that clarification. So we stand in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Next, we have up Ms. Ann Gregorian.
Yes, thank you. I support this bill. This ID confirmation is an orphan of photo ID. In 2014, voters without any ID were required to sign this affirmation statement prior to receiving their free voter photo ID from the registrar. And so while photo ID was eventually repealed, the affirmation statement remains. So without the corresponding free photo ID, the affirmation statement leaves no trace of the person who signed it. And this is during early in-person voting. I'm speaking of. Convenience should not dictate a voter ID requirements. Repealing vote by confirmation does not disenfranchise a single person. If a voter cannot produce one of the other 15 possible forms of valid ID, they will still be able to vote utilizing a provisional ballot. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Gregorian. And we have Ms. Melody Clark. Nope. Ms. Shelley Oberlander.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I support this bill. I believe in equal treatment of voters. With absentee voting by mail, the voter has to give their name, address, year of birth, and last four digits of their social security number. When voting in person, the voter is supposed to present an ID on the acceptable voter ID list, which is there's many choices as was said earlier, and then they can vote. But with this ID confirmation statement, it's just a caveat. All they have to do is sign. All there is a signature. There's not even an address. The other minimum requirements are at least a name and address. And the code requires the voter to present the ID. With the ID confirmation statement, the election office presents that to the voter and they just sign it. So with a provisional ballot, one more thing is the ID confirmation statement is unenforceable. It does say it's a penalty of a felony, but it is totally unenforceable. All you have is a signature. You don't even have an address of the voter. So if you would use the provisional ballot for the voter to vote, and they're legitimately that person, then they can, and they just didn't have their ID, then their vote will be counted. But you will have all that information to verify the voter and also to enforce the law if something was inaccurate. So please eliminate the ID confirmation statement and restore equal treatment to the voters as far as IDs go. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oberlander. And lastly, we have Ms. Clarabelle Willer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the community. Reiterate exactly what my fellow electoral board member from Loudon so eloquently said. We need to have uniformity for all voters. All voters should be given the same opportunity and should have to show some sort of ID. This is the single little form that we're talking about, the confirmation of identity. Anyone can walk into any polling place, in person, absentee, or on election day with no ID whatsoever and simply say, I'm Shelley Oberlander. And if nobody knew how Shelley looked in Loudon, I could walk in and vote Shelley's ballot. We need to have some sort of ID, and this confirmation statement gives nothing. It does not even require that you have the social security number or the date of birth that, as Ms. Oberlander pointed out, you must have if you're voting a mail-in absentee ballot. Also reducing the 45 days to 14. This committee has seen in the past the graphs that show that the vast majority, meaning greater than 2/3 to 75% of people vote in the last 2 weeks, which would be 14 days of the in-person absentee voting. This is a good bill, and it will save the registrars from their continuous cycle of having in-person absentee voting. Last year, they were dead on their feet. Ask your registrar.
Thank you,
They
Ms.
would
Wheeler.
support this reduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wheeler. Are there any further questions from the subcommittee? Hearing none, Delegate Zier.
Chair Glass, thank you for hearing me out. Thank you, committee, on behalf.
With that, the committee operates by motion.
Move to report.
Second.
Substitute motion. Move to PBI.
Okay, substitute motion.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and properly second to pass by indefinitely House Bill 2390. The clerk will open the roll so members can state their position on the board. Okay, the clerk will close the rolls, and House Bill 2390 passes by indefinitely on a vote of 5-2. Thank you so much, Delegate Zier. Right. Next up, we have House Bill 2216, Delegate O'Quinn.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 2216 is a bill that should look and sound familiar to you as members of the P&E Committee. It was a House Bill 742 last year, which we started off with a little bumpy and ended up with an amendment in the nature of a substitute that ultimately passed the House uncontested, and the bill you have before you is that bill. So, Madam Chair, I don't want to belabor what it does, but I will run through very quickly. As you know, the goal of this bill is to change how elections commissioners are appointed and to try to depoliticize that process. This would allow for increased independence from the office of the governor. It would make it one of 10 agency heads that are not subject to appointment by the governor, but would maintain the current proportional representation for the majority and minority political parties at 3-2. And it also clarifies the procedure for appointing an interim elections commissioner should there be a vacancy. So essentially what it does very quickly, Madam Chair, is it makes the commissioner appointed by the Board of Elections. It keeps the board members appointed by the governor and confirmed by the General Assembly at the 3-2 split with staggered terms. It leaves the number of appointee recommendations for each political party at 3. It clarifies that the elections commissioner is elected by an affirmative vote of 4 of 5 board members. And if the board fails, then the commissioner would be deemed to be reappointed, although in this case it would be for a relatively short period of time. The fail-safe on that is that that appointment would then circle back around to the General Assembly through the P&E Committee for confirmation. And it also clarifies that should there be a vacancy, that the Director of Operations would serve as the interim commissioner should there be that vacancy, and the bill does have an effective date of January 1, 2026. So that had to push. Last year it was January 1, 2025. We didn't pass it, so now it's January 1, 2026. That's the bill, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate O'Quinn. Are there any questions from the subcommittee? Right. Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Come right up.
Again, League of Women Voters of Virginia, we support this bill. The Commissioner of Elections should not be vulnerable to partisan political influence. Thank you.
Gratitude. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? Okay. Seeing none, online we have Ms. Ann Gregorian speaking against the bill.
Yes, Chairwoman. I oppose this bill because ELECT is a state agency and not under the direct control of the State Board of Elections. I feel it's not in the best interest of the electorate to remove a level of accountability that now exists under a governor appointment for this position. Executive oversight of the Commissioner of Elections provides accountability and the opportunity for the electorate to seek relief through the executive branch. I do not support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gregorian. And next we have Ms. Clarabelle Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. As a former member of the State Board of Elections, I know well that the State Board of Elections has no ability to investigate. We have no investigatory powers. Finding a commissioner, finding someone who is qualified and capable to be the commissioner of the Department of Elections is a very arduous task. The commissioner has many jobs and effectively is, as recognized, a department chairman. This is not something that should be entered into lightly and needs investigation to find the right person. And I would submit that the members of the State Board of Elections are no less partisan than anyone else. Thank you very much, and I do not support this bill.
Gratitude. Are there any further questions or comments from the subcommittee? Seeing none, the committee operates by motion.
Move to report.
A second.
It has been moved and properly second to report House Bill 2216. The clerk will open the rolls. Clerk will close the rolls, and it looks like House Bill 2216 reports on a vote of 5-2.
Thank you, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you, Delegate O'Quinn. Okay. All right, shifting to those sitting behind the dais. Do you guys want to fight for who goes first, green or? All right, Wassman, Delegate Wassman. We'll start with House Bill 1952.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 1952 is a transparency bill on the cost of getting voter registration list from the Board of Elections. I think it's a pretty short bill. I think the changes are on line 48, 49, and 78 and 79. Simply states that the cost for the voter registration list will be listed on the website. Understand that these lists will vary in price depending on how many users or people are listed on the list. It would just give somebody a tool. They could go on the website, make their determinations about how big of a list they want to request from elections before they make those calls and try to get those files. Just helping them make their decisions, get their budget together, and have some comparisons.
Thank you, Delegate Wassman. Are there any questions from the subcommittee? Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for the patron.
Delegate Henson.
Thank you. Just for everyone's recollection, this is for those who may not have an electronic system and is trying to request a voter list from Department of Elections. Is that correct?
No, sir. Actually, I was thinking that they would be requesting electronic lists.
Okay.
And that's kind of important because at one time you did have to do paper, yep, and it was a very arduous task to get paper. Now that they're electronic, it should be a lot easier to submit those files.
Thank you.
Delegate Singh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for the patron. What's the current process for getting the price for the list? Does someone request the list, then get a price emailed to them, and then decide if they want to move forward? And this bill would basically say it's published up front?
I mean, that is a great question. I think that's kind of the problem. I've had some different individuals come to me and express that they thought that the price that they got was really high compared to what some of their colleagues told them the price were. This would just be transparency, so everybody's kind of on an even page and they know what the prices are, the approximate price before they request them.
Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, I'm Megan Ryan. I'm with the Virginia Coalition for Open Government. I usually work in this FOIA sphere, But, and there we do promote the advanced acknowledgement that there will be a fee and an idea of where that fee will be. And so we generally support letting the public know in whatever form that public is, how much they can expect to pay for public records. Thank you.
Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? Okay. Seeing none. Delegate Sickles.
Thank you. I just wondered if the commissioner could answer a question, a real easy question while you're walking down here. Do you have a problem with this bill? That's the question.
Chair Glass, Delegate Sickles, I do not have a problem with this bill. Was that the question?
Yeah.
Delegate Sickles.
So you can publish the price of this list.
We can. I think the confusion comes in that the price is based off of the number of records that are requested. So that's why we encourage individuals to call us, because we can talk you through what the different options are for different kinds of lists. We offer lots of different kinds of lists. We do voter registration lists, absentee lists, net new voters to a district list. They all have different prices. And so that is why, because it's a sliding scale, it depends on how many records you request, which is why we encourage individuals to call us and we can talk them through their options.
Delegate Sickles.
So that sounds a lot harder than you said you don't have a problem with, but that you are going to have to do some work here. But
yes, sir.
Okay, but you have no problem with that.
We will do the work, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Singh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's more of a comment. It sounds like the work is being done once it's being requested. A request comes in, there's some formula being applied, and then a price is given. So having more transparency up front about how that process goes, maybe not to the penny, would be, in my view, helpful.
Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? Hearing none. Online, we have Ms. Clarabelle Wheeler wishing to speak in favor of the bill.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. Anytime anyone buys anything, it's always a good idea to know what the charge is before you enter into a contract. Yes, people can call the department and someone walks them through, but if there were a menu online, all the different types of lists that the department offers, and break it down by number of whatever you're requesting, it would be a lot easier. It would save a lot of time for any organization who needs to and is entitled to buy any type of registered voter list. Having the cost readily available is another means of transparency for our citizens, and the commissioner says that she can do it. So I think it's a great idea. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Ms. Martha Cohen.
Yes, thank you so much. I echo those comments. And even though it'll take a little time to put it up on the website, at the end of the day, it'll even save elect time, because people won't have to, from the department, won't have to stay on the phone with individuals. At least when individuals call, they'll have a specific question. So please, I hope you will vote for this, because it's another support of transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, we have Ms. Nancy Smith.
Nancy Wilson was she was a singer once upon a time. So, yes, and thank you, Madam Chairman, for allowing me to speak. The commissioner runs a very busy agency. Her staff stays quite busy. I can tell you that from our organization, who has purchased a voter file over a number of years, that the process is one of emailing the department, asking for that information, then getting the pricing afterwards. That doesn't mean that the transaction is completed, but there is an email process. So it's request, get a price, go back, look at another list, and determine what you're going to purchase, be it a primary list, a list for a locality, for the entire state. So it is typically an email means instead of using her staff, and that's all fine. But, I would not expect a staffer to be able to pick up the phone and give you that information. I will say that we are in support of this bill. We think it would make it easier for organizations like the one I work for to be able to budget what we can spend, what we can afford to spend on the voter file in Virginia. Last comment is that Virginia is one of the most expensive states in the country in terms of purchasing the voter file. There are only a few states that rank as expensive as Virginia. There are many states that actually provide the voter file at no cost. So the ongoing expensive situation that occurs for many organizations then often comes down to what can we afford at what time in the year based on what election. So thank you very much. We stand in support of this bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Smith. Are there any further comments from the subcommittee? Seeing and hearing none, the committee operates by motion.
Move to report.
It has been moved and properly second to report House Bill 1952. The clerk will open the rolls. We just need you to vote. Surprise. So it looks like House Bill 1952 reports on a vote of 7-0. Next up. Thank you, Madam Chair. You're very welcome. Next, we have House Bill 2057. Delegate Green.
Sure, and I'd like to,
Fine by me.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to move to strike House Bill 1560.
What we're going to do is we're going to take the three bills up that we're going to strike up in a block. But I recognize, I think he wants to make a comment on, you wanted to make a comment on 1566?
Correct.
Okay, I'll do that at the time that we strike the others and allow you to make comment on that.
Oh, okay, so you want to do House Bill?
I want you to go ahead and, present House Bill 2057.
Sure. House Bill 2057 comes from an idea I had, and this is all my idea. During a fall committee meeting, listening to Commissioner Beals, who's in there, and Chair Price. It would require voter registration question asked when a citizen in the Commonwealth applies for a hunting, fishing, milk distributor, or handgun permit in Virginia, because the next day after our meeting, I got a renewal application for my fishing license. Currently, per DMV records, there are 711,000 Virginians that are of voting age but do not have driver's license and therefore do not have a purpose to go to the DMV. The bill aims at catching as many Virginians that perhaps may register to vote but may have had a lapse in their registration or don't know where to go to get registered. I believe the intent and mission of this committee is to register as many Virginians as possible through as many means as possible and encourage the participation of the democratic process. I would hope the will of the committee to pass this bill.
Are there any questions from the subcommittee? Right. Is there anyone in the, Chairwoman Price?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would ask the delegate if you could describe what that process would be. So like when you go to the DMV and you get a driver's license, then they ask you, so is this, I'm in the place, I'm getting a milk distributor license, and they ask me if I want to register at that moment. Do they give me a form? What would the process look like?
The process most likely would take place as hunting and fishing license is due or online. The question would be asked, would you be interested in voting? And then you would say yes or no. Your information would be forwarded to the Department of Elections, and I spoke with a vendor today that possibly the program could take you directly to register electronically. So that would be.
Madam Chair, follow-up.
Chairwoman Price.
Yeah, and I would just, I guess, ask the gentleman if he knew what all went into the conversations in order for us to get to automatic voter registration and why it was so important that we went through the DMV with the types of questions that we ask and the processes that we take in order for that connection between elect and the DMV to be there.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay.
However, I'm sure it's an extensive process, but I have great faith in the government that we can add one more question to a form and get it directed to the right place.
Speaking to the bill.
Madam Chair.
So, Madam Chair, it's actually not adding a question to the form or anything. The reason why it went through the DMV when we were looking at the ways and how we could expand access, because I think we agree getting even more Virginians registered, and also shout out to the commissioner's presentation that showed actually Virginia is doing really well with the number of registered people that we have, but any eligible voter that's not yet registered is someone that we need to reach. However, it was quite interesting because I wanted to see where we could go with this. But DMV has questions of citizenship in order to get their in order to get a driver's license or different things. Like they ask specifically. Now, whether or not DMV's records and elect should be using that in order to get actual eligible voters kicked off of a list, that's a separate question. But do you know if you have to have if you have to be a citizen in order to get some of the licenses through these departments? And the answer is no. And they don't even have the question. And so a lot of the things where we are trying to do expansions, trust me, we've looked to see where we could do those expansions to get everyone. But I think we should all agree that we don't want to accidentally set someone up to sign up to vote when they're not eligible. And we already have the issue that we experienced between DMV and the eligible voters that were kicked off of the list because of the information from DMV. And it's for that reason why I think we need to be very careful and clear about the things that we want to marry if the processes are not aligned across all agencies. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, if I might address that. In the bill, it specifically addressed, the first question is, are you a citizen? So there would be two questions in this. And then the next question would be, are you interested in voting? So, and that's a very fair and valid question.
Yeah. So, Madam Chair, then my follow-up would be, why stop there? What other licenses can we add? Because I would have the amendment. Let's work together and expand this list to every single time someone comes into contact with the government.
Are we talking a friendly amendment? I'm certainly open to a friendly amendment.
I move for the bill to go by for the day so that we can come up with an amendment. If that is where the gentleman from my good city would like to go, let's do it. Let's try and see however many times someone can touch the government to see if they can also get that request so that we can get to, what it was, the Madam Commissioner, are we at like 70%? We can get to 100% registered voters. Look forward to working with you.
You consider that?
I would consider it, and I could also, Madam Chair, I could also see cosmetologists, I could see realtors, I could see a host of forms and things that the government does that we could potentially get more voters. And I think it's good.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. It has been moved and properly second to pass House Bill 2057 by for the day. That's voting. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay. House Bill 2057 passes by for the day. So we have a couple administrative things that we need to do. I'm going to ask that we take House Bill 1566, 2388, and 2337. We're going to put those up in a block to strike those bills. That'll be our last action of the committee.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and properly second. I would like to go ahead and give Delegate Green the opportunity to speak on behalf of one of those stricken.
Speaking to the motion, many times we start with a bill and everybody on this committee, everybody in the House believes in election integrity, maintaining excellence in our elections. Sometimes the bills, as you get further down the road, come with unintended consequences. And this is an example of that. It became very expensive, and I would never pass expensive cost on to our localities. That's my intention, not my intention. So I move to strike this bill and support striking the motion to strike House Bill 1566.
Okay. All right. Before us, we have in block the three bills we wish to strike. Will the clerk open the roll so members can report their position on the electronic voting board? All right, and that passes on a vote of 7-0. We have no more business in front of this committee. I want to express gratitude for the committee members for their patience and say meeting is adjourned.